So today we're going to be talking about the 1980 movie The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Now, this is adapted from the Stephen King book of the same name, and this is one of Stephen King's earliest novels. However, it turns out that King himself is one of the few people that is not a fan of this movie. He felt that Stanley Kubrick took too much out of the story, and that Jack Nicholson was not a truly believable character to be Jack Torrance. That Jack Nicholson pretty much just played Jack Nicholson. Maybe I'm just putting a few words in there, but the main point is that he was not a fan of the casting of Jack Nicholson, along with some other complaints as well. So, King's opinions aside, what's this movie really about? Well, you have Jack Torrance and his family, played by Jack Nicholson and Shelley, Duvall, and Danny Lloyd. And you have this family go to Sidewinder, Colorado to take care of a hotel that's shut down during the winter months because essentially it's not operable during those months because of the heavy snow and the tremendous amount of bad weather that comes into play in that area. It basically shuts down the entire mountainside. So he interviews for the position, and you have Stuart Ullman, who's played by some Pat Sajak doppelganger, and he lets him know about some tragic events that happened there previously with some previous caretakers, and lets him know that they've essentially gone mad and murdered their family. And Jack Nicholson's character says, "Oh, that's fine. I won't do anything like that." We'll see. Now, I've got to admit, this hotel is on a beautiful landscape, and the whole mountainside is just so pretty to look at. It's unfortunate it covers an old Indian burial ground, though, and the fact that it probably plays into the story, as you'll see. Then we go to Wendy and Danny, the mother and son, and you find out that Danny has this friend that he talks to named Tony. Of course, I think of like Tony the Tiger, but to each their own. And he talks to him quite a bit, and Tony tells him about these two girls in blue and all of this blood rushing in from the elevators. And I have to admit, this again is Stanley Kubrick's work, and Stanley Kubrick is quite the visionary and really knows how to paint a picture and how to make a movie. It's beautiful. He really spent a lot of time putting together all of these intricacies, and you can tell by the way that the sets are designed, by the way that the camera just lingers around the different hallways. You can tell from the hedge maze that comes into play here. Now, I have to mention one thing that was not adapted from Stephen King's novel was that the hedge maze had animals, like kind of hedge animals, if you will, and they actually came to life and they had a little bit more of a bite to them. And it's unfortunate that they're not in this movie, though, as you may find out later on, Stephen King tried to make his own screenplay of The Shining because he was that irritated with Stanley Kubrick's film. Yes, that irritated. And the hedge animals are in there, but from what I can tell, they're really not utilized as well as they could be. So I guess you're not really missing out on a whole bunch there. Unless someone ever decides to actually make The Shining again with some scary hedge animals. Here's the thing, though. They're not really the focal point of the story. They're just kind of a fun side dish to the whole entree of the Overlook Hotel, which is the name of the hotel that Jack Torrance is the caretaker of. As you visit with the hotel and you see Jack Torrance absorb more of the views, you get the sense that he's been here before. Now, he's a recovering alcoholic, and he's quit drinking for the past 4 or 5 months at the time of coming to the hotel because he dislocated his son's shoulder after a long night out. And you just get this odd feeling that he's tapping into some old friends of his that, well, aside from the ominous Stuart Ullman, that bad things are going to come out of this. But what kinds of bad things and how bad? Now, this movie takes its time in terms of setting everything up and then having dramatic events occur. But here's the thing, it's a good mixture of landscape and action. And the landscape, the picture that this movie paints is really worth savoring all that time. That way, when the crazy things happen, you can really see everything come to life. So, you have all of these sites. You have this ballroom where, in the beginning, the family's informed that the ballroom is empty of any festivities such as liquor. It keeps the insurance costs down to do it that way, which makes sense to me. But later on, Jack comes up to the bar and essentially has a bartender named Lloyd who serves him his booze, and then you start to wonder, well, does this hotel have booze or not? And you get the feeling that Jack is a bit delusional, on top of whatever else is wrong with him and what's wrong with this hotel. You have Shelley Duvall as his wife. She's probably one of the main complaints that people have when they review this movie. She's passable. I think they obviously could have cast someone much more compelling, but I have to be honest with you, her character really fit the anxious, insecure, confused as hell mother that I would expect in this kind of film, because her husband has just gone off the deep end and her son is talking to his friend Tony, and she's kind of just accepted that because if she doesn't accept it, what else is she going to do with her life? It's going to be pretty miserable if she just thinks that everyone is insane and acts like a complete, bitch. And you have to wonder, okay, well, how did she get all these attitudes? Well, it turns out that her and Stanley Kubrick actually did not get along very well on the set, and that he pretty much provoked her to elicit those emotions of anger, so that when she had these scenes where she had to play big leagues, she was genuinely pissed because Kubrick was so mean to her. Now, that being said, Kubrick's the one in charge of the movie. It kind of makes sense that he has all these visions about what he wants to create of this land, of this Overlook Hotel. Personally, I'm amazed at all of the effects that this movie has, of all of the camera angles, of all of the sets, of bringing this hotel to life and really giving it some flair and flavor. It's pretty fun. So another character that's pretty important to this story is Dick Halloran, and he's the head chef of the Overlook Hotel, and he gives a tour to Jack Torrance and his family when they move in on opening day, or closing day for the hotel, opening day for caretaker season, and he has a good sense of humor. He has this kind of spry and upbeat attitude to him, and you can tell that he enjoys what he does. At some point, Wendy and Jack are on their different paths with their people that they have to talk to, and uh, and Dick Halloran pulls over Danny, and then he starts asking him some questions and calling him Doc, and then Wendy comes back and he keeps calling him Doc, and Wendy just looks at Dick and says, "Well, how do you know we call him Doc?" And then Mr. Halloran just kind of gives a beat around the bush answer, and you're thinking, what's this guy doing? He seems kind of creepy. Aside from what some people would do to call the police on him, it turns out that Mr. Halloran and Danny have something in common. They have the Shining. That's where the name comes in. Essentially, it's a psychic ability, and they can talk without moving their lips, as Dick says. They can hold conversations without ever opening their mouths. They have these psychic intuitions. They have a much more animated feel about them. They can see things that have happened in the past. Some things from the past are so strong that they actually can lash out at them and hurt them. And Dick even tells Danny to stay out of this room 237 in the movie anyway. I think it's a slightly different number in the book. Tomato. It's this fucking scary room. And of course, he gets tempted to go into the room because the door's already open, and this lady comes out of the bathtub and pretty much grabs on to Danny, and he runs the hell out. Then later on, he sees those two girls in action. They were the two daughters of the former caretaker Grady, and they look at him and tell him, "Come play with us, Danny." So, I wouldn't say it's funny, but it's fun. It's nice seeing this thing in action. This movie is one of those movies that is constantly parodied and referenced. You know, everyone's done it when Family Guy even resorts to mocking you. I love Family Guy and all, but damn, they scrape the bottom of the barrel, and then they go a whole nother barrel's worth under that barrel just to get all of the residuals out. Anyway, Danny's not too keen on these girls, and he sure as hell isn't keen on the prospect of his dad going mad and being carried away by the hotel and all of its spirits. And he's pretty spooked. And even Wendy picks up on the fact that maybe Jack is not okay. And of course, by the time that Wendy really picks up on the fact that Jack is not okay, he is well on his way to the decline and to just being a miserable asshat. He's a writer, and he's supposedly been working on this story this entire time, and you keep thinking, well, what's he writing about? I'm curious. Well, it turns out that all he's been typing is all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Repeat ad nauseum. With some exceptions of like extra characters and maybe some indents or tabs, or maybe like a random word or two in there, but essentially the same message times 10,000. And all of these pages that he has in this trash can have the exact same phrase. And I have to admit, really? Not even a slight story? That would have been entertaining. Something else I have to mention too is that while this really isn't that scary, And some of the things that happen in this movie really aren't that scary on their own, but the music that accompanies this movie is spectacular, and it really helps set the mood. And it even makes things that wouldn't be that scary, like reading the same sentence over and over and over again. It makes it actually kind of scary because while she's reading this, it cuts away and Jack is there and she scares the shit out of her. And I probably shouldn't laugh, but it's funny. Seeing Shelley Duvall hasn't really had a lot going on for her. Now, I know in the last week or so, as of this filming, that she actually ended up on Dr. Phil and looks nothing like she used to. It's not even worth getting any further than that. I'm just going to address that I am aware of that situation. But she hasn't really had a lot of roles. She was Olive Oyl in Popeye with like Robin Williams back when he was still around. And those are the two main roles that she had. Now, granted, I don't even have one major role in my life, so I can't give her too much shit, but some stars hit it real big and others don't. Um she she seems like she's reasonably scared and has these emotions that you would expect from this character. And Jack Nicholson has a descent into madness, but the thing is, it doesn't really surprise you. You you're not really waiting to see if he's going to be a madman. You can just take one look at him and there you go. You know he's a madman. And if he's not a madman, you know he's going to be a madman with maybe just a couple of pegs down. All right? It's not really much of a surprise. But the way that Stanley Kubrick makes this all come together, along with everyone else that was a part of this movie, it really sells this story. I will admit, there is a moment before Jack truly goes into insanity where he ends up having a very loud nightmare at his typewriter, and he ends up imagining that he killed his wife and son, and he shows some genuine concern, and you, for a moment or two, think, wow, this guy is not off of his rocker, and he is truly scared that he's going to descend into this madman that he'll end up descending into. Spoiler. Um, but it's a very short-lived moment. Now, that being said, the rest of the movie is pretty awesome. You have the red rum that Danny carves out in lipstick, which of course in the mirror spells out murder. You have the extravagant ballroom where everyone looks like they're in the 20s flappers style, and you have uh, Jack coming across an axe and wielding it and becoming an axe murderer himself, and of course making his infamous hack into the bathroom door and yelling, "Here's Johnny!" It's still pretty great. Um, you have Shelley Duvall actually showing some grit. I won't say she was the toughest woman I've ever seen on screen, but you felt like she was a reasonable woman that acquired a bit of additional strength that really just gave the additional punch. For example, when she jabs at Jack's hand and actually makes him bleed a bit, and he screams out in pain, and you're just thinking, yes, good, good. Because at this point, Danny's already crawled out into the outdoors. I guess it's hard to go into the outside, but just stick with me here. He goes down the hill of snow that's gone up so far as to have its apex right next to the bathroom window. It's pretty cool. you have Jack just descend further and further, and you think, how low can he go? And he just keeps beating with the limbo. And you have Grady come into the picture because Jack keeps going back into the ballroom with his bar and his booze, and he is informed by Grady that he corrected them and rolls his R's really well in a way that I cannot replicate. I can't even do it. Don't. Okay, I'm done with that. But he is able to roll his R's and is able to open the pantry door for Jack when he, even when he's peeved, and says that Jack is doing an awful job at correcting his family. I'm doing a little better. To which I gotta ask, why? Why is this hotel so murderous? What, because you built on an Indian burial ground, you have to keep killing everyone that ever sets foot on the hotel? That's dark. Um, this movie ends. Well, okay, if you really don't want to know how this movie ends, I'll give you a final spoiler warning. So, spoiler. So after all the mad jabs that Jack has made on his wife and son, and after he swings the axe into Dick Halloran's heart and kills him off because Danny sent the shining message all the way down to Dick Halloran in Miami, from Colorado, I might add. And Dick comes up, but Jack knows that he's coming because Grady tells him while Jack is about to kill his wife. So he comes down, Jack does, and swings an axe in the Dick's heart. I know that sounds weird, just roll with it. And he looks for Danny outside, and he goes out into the hedge maze, and Danny realizes, and this is a pretty cool part, and Danny's been making all these footprints in the snow, and then he's like, well, he doesn't say it, he's like, oh, shit, maybe I should backpedal and end my footprint somewhere where I'm not standing right now. So he backpedals quite a bit and then hides in the bush while Jack runs into the hedge maze. And once he runs by Danny, Danny runs the hell out, tracing his steps back out. So that's the best of both worlds. Not only realizing that you left a path for yourself that you could have someone follow you into, but cutting off that path so that they get tricked in, and taking that path to get yourself out. It's quite the smart kid. That or Tony's one hell of a communicator. Jack ends up getting stuck in the hedge maze, and you see his body frozen in more ways than one with a freeze frame, and Danny and Shelley Duvall get the hell out, and then you have the movie zoom in on this ballroom picture from 1921, 60 years or so before Jack Torrance and his family went to the Overlook Hotel. And Jack Nicholson is in the center, and he was the caretaker then, and you've always been the caretaker, as he's been told. What? I'm so confused. I mean, I read the book The Shining about a year or two ago, and I'm still confused. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But this fits with Stanley Kubrick and his movies, though, because Kubrick always seems to want people to discuss the ending ad nauseum and have something to chew on when the movie ends. I don't know if I'm terribly curious to find out. Now, that being said, I will probably read that book again, The Shining, but there's actually been a sequel that's released called Doctor Sleep, and I will be starting that book very soon. I just picked it up from the library, and so I'm excited to give that a read. And I hope they actually make it into a movie. and I hope they make it into a good movie. And unfortunately, it will not be directed by Stanley Kubrick, because he's passed on in like 1999 or 2000 or so, and so it's been a while, and it's unfortunate. But the good news is that Stanley Kubrick and his movies live on. And in terms of what I would rate this is my favorite movie yet out of everything. You've got the great combination of Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King. Even if Stephen King didn't like the movie itself, his work inspired it. And Stephen King is a fascinating writer, and you really should go check him out. And you should really go check out these Stanley Kubrick movies too. And you should also check out more of my stuff. But I feel uh, much more humble when I look at these greats of film and literature. So you really should go check them out. Now, in terms of my quest for the best, this is currently my best. This will be a hard one to top. Um, I'm sure it's absolutely doable. There are plenty of great movies out there, as evidenced by the top 250. But I'm excited to really dig into this list even more and let you know what I think. All right, so this was a lot of fun. This was my favorite one to really talk about and get into. And so let me know if you guys have any requests for the Waldo's Wacky World of Film. And as always, you should click and subscribe to figure out more. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.